Evening, everybody. This is the 9th forum sponsored by the Southgate Women's Group for the candidates for Palo Alto City Council. We're so proud. And we only have one more forum to go, and that will be with Stephen Lee. But tonight, we have got Raven Malone, and she's going to be with us for the whole hour answering your questions. By the way, tonight is our very first international forum because we have at least one very important person in Germany this evening. Actually, it's early morning for her, and that's our moderator, Jeanette Kiesling. She won't yawn too much, I promise. It's your turn, Jeanette.
Thank you very much, Rada, and welcome everyone. Especially welcome City Council candidate Raven Malone. Very proud to have you here tonight, and have you answer a lot of questions for us, hopefully, which gets me right into the way we run this forum. If you have any questions that you would like me to ask Raven, please post them in your chat right now. Everyone is going to be muted throughout the meeting, and hopefully we're not going to get any extra thrills this time by Zoom bombers like last time. So we hope to just conduct this forum as we did before. Raymond, before I hand over to you to give you about 5 to 10 minutes to talk about who you are, why you want to be on City Council, some of the issues that you would like to focus on, let me just very, very briefly introduce you. You're an engineer born in Mobile, Alabama. You live in the Triple L neighborhood of Palo Alto. And you're pretty new actually to Palo Alto. You just moved here about a year ago. Yeah, and then what I read on your website, you are criticizing council a little bit for not being responsive enough for the issues that you would like to be focused on, especially police reform and housing. So these are some of our biggest issues in the past forums, have been one of our biggest issues in the past forums. So we would like to hear from you a little bit more about that. And like I said, who you are, why you want to run for City Council. The floor is yours for the next 5 to 10 minutes.
Well, thank you so much, Jeanette. Thank you for having me. And like you said, I'm from Mobile, Alabama. I was born and raised. I'm an engineer. I have an undergrad and a master's degree in electrical engineering and a minor in engineering management. And I've been a electrical software and systems engineer for the past 8 years. While a systems engineer, I've been the lead engineer of sometimes multi-billion-dollar programs, which I feel really helped me with my collaboration skills, which I know will be very important as a city council member. Some, just personal things about me. I have a dog named Luna, and I love her. Dogs are incredible. I am a slight tea addict. I love tea. I love boba. I love everything art. So I moved to the Bay Area because I really love the area, and I really felt like, I fit in a lot more, and I felt more, I don't know, like warm and fuzzy about the Bay Area than I did about living in the South. So that's what brought me here. And I was raised by a village, literally, and they taught me, the value of really working hard. And I took that with me while I was getting my degrees, actually. I worked full-time while I was getting both of my degrees, which wasn't easy, but it was very worth it. I feel like I learned my compassion from my dad. My dad actually went to New Orleans to help with the hurricane relief efforts after Katrina hit. And about a decade later, I think, when Hurricane Harvey hit Texas, me and some friends went there, and we got a boat, and we spent 4 days going around rescuing people and their pets from their homes. And it was a huge kind of wake up and a definitely life-changing experience. If I could go back a million times, I would do it all over again because it was just worth it. And I mean, from there, I kind of retained a sense of service. So whenever someone needs help, I feel the need to step up. So that's kind of how I wound up running for city council. You know, I moved here and just speaking to people, speaking to residents about the issues in the city, and then, you know, paying attention to what was going on in city council. I felt like sometimes they didn't match, and some things that were very important issues weren't really taken with the urgency that I felt they deserved. And, you know, I just kind of started feeling like, if not me, then who? And if not now, when? And I mean, that's what made me run. But I mean, my fiance and I, we love Palo Alto, and we had our hearts set on Palo Alto before we were able to move here. Unfortunately, it took a while because Palo Alto's a little expensive, and we had a hard time finding something within our budget. But until then, we would come up here and we would hang out and, you know, go downtown, go to the farmers market, go to the restaurants. We're both big foodies, and we just really loved the area. Palo Alto's very, very homey to us, and we were very fortunate and very happy that we were able to finally move here. The resources that Palo Alto has are amazing. I mean, we have 3 great hospitals. Stanford's right there. Our school system's pretty good, and it was just the best option, in our opinion, for somewhere to settle down and put roots. That being said, I do feel it's important to address the issues that are in Palo Alto. So I really, you know, envision a Palo Alto where everyone is safe, especially when riding their bikes, families and kids who want to bike for forms of transportation. I feel like it's important that we keep them safe and they're able to return home safely. It's important that we create better public transportation options, greener transportation. It's important that we create more sustainability in Palo Alto. California takes pride in being green, and I feel like it's important, especially as kind of leaders of Silicon Valley, that we take that on and, you know, make sure that we make Palo Alto as sustainable as possible. I also envision a Palo Alto where everyone has a place to call home, especially during times like this, during COVID, and during times where we have fires kind of everywhere, and it affects the air quality. It's really sad, especially knowing that there are some people who are unhoused and who are having to sleep outside during this really bad air quality. And I also envision a Palo Alto where everyone feels safe, especially when having to call the police. So that's my kind of why I'm running and what brought me here and what inspired me to decide to run for city council.
Sure, then let's jump right into the questions. Or do you want to take a couple of more minutes about other issues, or are you good?
Oh, yes. So you did ask me about me being critical of city council and about what else? Policing?
Well, there were 2 issues that I found on your website that you prominently put there. You said that the current council isn't responsive enough to the community when it comes to issues such as police reform and housing. But I could jump right into one of those big issues that are like I would say, the 4 big issues that we had on the past session. So if you want, we can just start with policing, because I thought that was, to me, that stood out on your webpage as something that you seem to be very passionate about. So let me jump right into this and ask you this. You are in favor of defunding the police, and obviously we heard a lot about this in the context of the George Floyd killing. Can you maybe give us a bit more background what exactly you mean with that, and also what the George Floyd killing, how you relate that to establishing a safer Palo Alto? I mean, how do you transfer that experience and bring it home, so to speak?
So that, I feel like out of all of the things that have happened when dealing with the police, the George Floyd incident hit home for a lot of people. Even people who felt like, before there wasn't really an issue in dealing with the police, that was kind of a clear understanding, I think, to a lot of people that there was, and that we needed to address it. So I wouldn't necessarily say defund the police. I would say reimagine the way we do community safety. And when I say that, what I mean is, really using our resources. And we can establish programs where instead of sending the police for helping the unhoused, for mental health crises, for drug overdoses, we can send social services. We can send specialists who've been working on cases like this and dealing with people who have mental health problems and who are unhoused for years. And I mean, it really breaks my heart when when the police is called, especially on an unhoused person, because I mean, they don't have a home. So it just feels wrong, in my opinion, to put them in jail for something that may or may not, there's more that we can do to help them. And I feel like we should. I mean, they're also members of this community, and we should treat them as such. And the police being called on them when they're just trying to live is the wrong action, in my opinion. And I just, at the end of the day, I want everyone to be safe. And, the police, their job is to serve and protect the community. And I feel like sometimes that doesn't necessarily happen. And I just want to really stress that it's important that it does. And when it doesn't, that there's accountability. And not only accountability, but transparency, which is also kind of lacking in our police department. So I don't want to say defund the police, but just change the way that we do it in a way that benefits everyone, and that everyone receives the help that they need at the time that they need it. Of course, we'll always need the police. I actually just needed the police. My motorcycle got stolen and I had to call them. So it's like, we need the police for the crimes, of course. But for the things that aren't crimes, when people just need help, let's get them the help that they need. So that's the way that I like to reimagine our policing. Oh, as well as, I'm sorry?
No, go ahead. You go ahead.
As well as, I would like to see, unarmed peace officers for routine traffic stops. There is actually a couple that they broke down not too far away from me on Oregon Expressway. And I stopped and I helped them push their car into the turning lane, and a police officer pulled up to assist, but I noticed that he pulled up because the gentleman in the passenger seat, his posture changed, his demeanor changed, and we were just joking and laughing about the situation and about what happened, and then he was really serious, and it was like he would turned into stone. And it's like that, seeing things like that breaks my heart, because I know exactly how it feels. And I just want to make sure that no one feels like it could be, you know, their last day, or they might be assaulted or treated like a criminal because they had their car broke down, or they had a broken tail light, or they forgot to use their blinker. So, I mean, I just really want to push for safety.
Is there anything specific about the Palo Alto police that you can point us to? I mean, is this more like a national topic or an overall theme, or is there something within the Palo Alto police that you specifically want to look at and investigate once you are elected to city council?
I mean, well, there definitely have been, I mean, this is a national issue, to be fair. It's not just in the Palo Alto Police Department, and in a lot of police departments, it's way worse than Palo Alto. So, not saying that I'm picking on Palo Alto, but I mean, we do also have to address this that's going on in our city as well. And I mean, there have been videos showing excessive force, and nothing really happened. There have been cases of people having bones broken by the police, and nothing really happened. There have been things said in our police department that were kind of racist. Well, a lot racist, but it's important that
Can you give us an example?
I don't want to call this person out, but I mean, you guys can just Google it. It was really ugly. It was really unfortunate that it happened, and I really hope that we don't allow things like this to happen in the future. And I hope that if something like that were to happen, that there are consequences instead of promotions. So that is what I'll say about that situation. And transparency. It's really hard to find any information really on what our police force does, on the demographics of who gets pulled over, how many people get pulled over per day, the specifics of some cases. Also, there have been things that have happened, and there's either no report, or the report says something completely different, and then the video comes out, and then it's like, where was this in the report? There have been cases where the body cameras were turned off, and I mean, it defeats the purpose of having a body camera that's supposed to also contribute to accountability if you don't wear it or don't have it on.
Okay, so I see a lot of questions coming in, which it's really a good sign, Ravens. A lot of people would like to know.
Oh
what and I want to start with a question. I can't see who the person is because I think it's just, it says Shani Nu, but she or he would like to know, please discuss Palo Alto's plans for sea level rise and how you can contribute to the protection and enhancement of our ecosystems and endangered species along the bay. So there is a question for the Green California EU.
Yes, so climate change, it's so important that we address it. It's so important that we do everything that we can to combat it. And I mean, especially because we have the creek right here, we already have a history of some floods. It's important that we do what we can to combat sea level change, sea level rise. And there was actually a discussion on this, and there's a discussion on doing levees to help combat the sea level rise, so that, you know, when the sea level does rise, it doesn't flood the whole city, and the levees create that level of protection. And I fully support this. And I mean, we do of course have to make sure that we are protecting the ecosystem that's in our marshes and in our greenlands, and I mean, in our open spaces. I know that's not really having to do with the sea level rises, but we do have to make sure that as as well as, combating climate change and protecting the neighborhoods and the residents in the cities around us from climate change and sea level rise, that we're also making sure that we're doing what we can to protect our ecosystems as well.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to jump into two other questions. Like one came from Sophie Tseng. She wants to know whether you have run for public office before and was wondering how well you actually know the city. And then this is something that came up in some of the papers that I've read announcing your campaign. How well do you know the city after just 1 year? The same question comes in from Susan Newman. Welcome to Palo Alto, she says. For what organizations or community have you volunteered in your experience? So can you give us a little bit more about your background and which kind of expertise you're bringing to the table and why you feel that being in Palo Alto for 1 year is enough to tackle the issues in the city?
Okay. Well, I don't have any prior political experience. I do have experience, like I said before, as far as my engineering with leading really big projects, making sure that the voices are heard who we're doing the projects for, and making sure that I'm able to collaborate with my team members well, even if we have opposing opinions. What do I feel like I know the city well? I'm not an expert on Palo Alto, but I do feel like I've done my homework, and I spend my time speaking to residents and other members of Palo Alto who are well versed in issues, and I make sure that I hear different opinions. And so what I look for in a city council member is someone who listens, someone who works really hard, and someone who learns and never stops learning. And one thing that, some people may see it as a weakness, but I see it as a strength in me not being here that long, is that I'm not looking at the issues of our city from my own perspective. I'm looking at it from the perspective of the residents. How will this affect you? Tell me your concerns, tell me your point of view. Let me take a walk in your shoes for a second and let me see what is really the core issue that we need to fix. Because I feel like one problem with being here for a long time, which isn't a bad thing, it's just you already have an idea of how you would fix the problem even before you understand the problem fully. Whereas I'm having to come in and understand the problem and understand the history of the problem, and what the discussions were and what was tried years ago, and then say, okay, well, why did we need this in the first place? What problem were we trying to fix? Maybe I should look into us trying this again, but let's do it a different way. So that's what I feel like, that's what I think I bring to the table, is just a fresh perspective, innovative ideas, and someone who listens, someone who is going to make sure that I hear the residents before making decisions. I didn't have a desire to go into politics beforehand. I just really felt like there were people who weren't heard, and I wanted to make sure that I brought their voices to the table.
Let me follow that up with a question from Susan Newman. She would like to know, can we ask for more detail about how Palo Alto is not responsive enough to important issues, and to give an example of how Raven would address this unresponsiveness? So a little bit more detail to what you kind of already talked about. Yeah, maybe you can give us a little bit more, a couple more examples on that.
Okay, so one thing is homelessness, helping the unhoused. That's one thing that I think should have been dealt with a long time ago, or there should have been a program. And I know that we have the safe parking program now, which is a great, better than nothing thing to do. It only allows for 12 spaces, whereas we have over 300 people here who are unhoused in Palo Alto. I would like to see us try other alternatives. In San Jose, there's a program called Destination Home, and they help transition people who are unhoused from being unhoused into having homes, and also helping them with getting jobs. Because I mean, I can't imagine being unhoused in the Bay Area and trying to get back on my feet especially in one of the most expensive cities in the United States. Another issue would be housing. We keep talking about how we need housing. We were supposed to be creating 300 homes a year. That hasn't been happening. And if we're going to say that we need housing, we need to make sure that we make it happen. We need to make sure that we make it easier for developers to build housing here. We need to make sure that we offer even density incentives, where if a home is built, like an apartment complex was built, instead of maybe 15% affordable housing, because we need affordable and market rate housing. But instead of maybe 15%, maybe 25%. So I am pro increasing the height maximum. Of course, not in residential areas. It would be in areas that make sense, like near transit, downtown, Cal Ave, El Camino, areas where dense infill housing will really benefit the community. I'm sure no one wants an apartment complex next to their single family home. I know I would not want that. But yeah, I just feel like there could be other things that the city could do that would increase the amount of housing that we bring. And there are a lot of developers that don't want to build here because of the process that we have.
Let me follow that up with something that Kathy writes. She writes, does Raven believe the city should be spending lots of city tax dollars to build housing for the homeless? Who should pay for this? So maybe you can elaborate a little bit more about your program on taking care of the homeless situation in Palo Alto.
Yes. So with programs like that, we wouldn't be spending tax dollars on that. You can get private funding through businesses, companies, and I don't mean taking money from the businesses here to pay for that. I mean businesses voluntarily donating money to the programs. There's federal funding, there's grants. There are a lot of ways that this can be paid for. That doesn't mean the city have to pay for it. The program that's in San Jose currently, San Jose is not paying for that.
Okay, and following that up with another question from Kathy, does Raven believe housing is a human right, and what does that mean?
Absolutely.
That those in single family housing must permit high-rise towers. Well, you kind of got to that already. We build next to their homes. You clearly said no to that. But
Really
going
not.
back to the first question, is it a human right? And I guess what Kathy means with that is, what is the philosophy behind this whole housing issues? You're saying that you don't want to use tax dollars, you want to bring that in from somewhere else, but explain a little bit more how you would like to approach, let's say, business owners in Palo Alto and ask them to voluntarily help to build housing for the homeless.
So, for instance, one way that you can get a business or even a person to donate money, naming rights, or just having it public that they contributed to this project, especially when it's something that is a benefit to people. There are a lot of businesses who do just want to help people. So, I mean, that's why I said that you can get a lot of private funding for things like that. And What was the rest of the question? I'm sorry.
Well, that was pretty much it.
Housing is absolutely,
Sorry?
okay. Yes, but housing is,
Right.
in my opinion, absolutely. I'm sorry?
I think you meant the rest of the question that Kathy posed. Is that what you wanted to know?
Yes, but I mean, housing is absolutely a human right in my opinion. It's just really hard for me to be okay with knowing that there are some people out there who have no place at all. Like, even if we were to create micro units for people who are unhoused as a starting point, that would still be better than them having to sleep on the street. And I mean, we have families who are sleeping in cars.
Yeah. So you also proposed tiny homes, and I looked into that because I didn't know about them. They actually look quite nice. So you could see that sort of being an issue that the city comes up with. Okay, let's just move back to one question that is sort of overall guiding our discussion here a little bit through the statement I introduced you with. And that's a question from Susan Newman. Can we ask for more detail about how Palo Alto is not responsive enough to important issues, and to give an example of how she would address this unresponsiveness?
Okay, let's see, what else? COVID, that would be one. I feel like the city's been a little slow in providing free test sites, whereas other cities like Hayward and Fremont have had this for a while now. Things to help our businesses. We did issue a kind of bailout, but it was only issued as a lottery system, and we helped, I believe, 50 businesses, whereas over 2,000, applied for assistance. And I would have personally taken that money and done something that helped all of the businesses, or most of them at least, like created a comprehensive marketing plan that could drive more business to them during this time of pandemic when not a lot of people are even going outside. So I just really feel like it's important to make sure that we're doing all that we can to help the city, especially during times like this in COVID. And I don't think that our city has done enough. So I would have set up free testing sites, and I would have done more for our businesses and, I mean, our residents as well. There are residents who are being priced out, who are being evicted, and it's important that we make sure that we're keeping our city functioning while also trying our best to stay afloat as well. And I know we cut $40 million from the budget in order to help with that, as far as COVID and the fact that we're not getting, the sales tax and the transient tax that we were before. But it's just important to me that we do a little more, and I feel like the city's kind of dropped the ball a little.
Okay, I want to go into this topic of infrastructure a little bit. And before I ask the most important question of the evening, which is what you think about grade separation, that is something that, especially down here in Southgate, is something that we're interested in. Obviously, for obvious reasons, we're affected by it a lot. But I would like to start with a question from Abby Bradsky first. There has been talk in City Council about standardizing all the RPP, residential parking program. How do you feel about that idea? If on council, would you consider reevaluating and reorganizing this program during and after COVID?
Well, for the resident parking program, so the thing is, I don't like really making decisions like that affect a lot of people without speaking to more residents first. So as far as the RPP program, maybe we should put it as a vote, or maybe we should definitely reevaluate it. I mean, don't get me wrong, RPP would be a great source of revenue. So it's definitely something worth looking into, but I do want to make sure that it's something that we do it in a way where, I mean, look into it, we already have it, but that we do it in a way that we're able to bring in more revenue and it's not necessarily hurting the residents, and that is convenient for the residents. Like, it's not done in a way where it's difficult to get your permits, and I mean, even creating an RPP program for, well, not, it wouldn't be called RPP program, but a parking permit program for businesses as well. I would like to look into that. Just because they're bringing in more people, they're bringing in more cars, which needs more parking, which is kind of the reason why we need an RPP program in the first place. So I would like to have a parking program as well that businesses have to pay into, because I feel like if they're taking our parking spaces, it's fair that they pay for them.
Okay, so then let's jump to that, I guess, that very important question for us down here in Southgate. What is your opinion about grade separation? Or if you have any opinions already on, especially on closing Churchill, in case, you know, we move forward with the plans on the table. Do you have any any opinions on that?
Yes. So, I mean, the big picture when it comes to grade separation is just that, you know, especially with more trains coming because of the Caltrain electrification, it's really important that we don't keep the trains at grade. That's too unsafe for everyone. It's too bad for traffic. So there definitely should be a grade separation. As far as Churchill, so, well, before I get into that, more things that we also need to consider when talking about grade separation is, you know, making sure that we're not demolishing homes in the process, making sure that we're able to maintain good access to our neighborhoods, specifically your neighborhoods, and you know, the aesthetic, the noise, making sure that we're overall still improving safety, which should be the main point anyway. So we just kind of have to do it in a way where it benefits the residents and Caltrain and the city, and where we're not sacrificing too much. As far as the Churchill crossing, so if we were to keep Churchill open, this can make the traffic there significantly worse. If we were to keep Churchill closed, then it could worsen the congestion at 6 different intersections. I know that with street improvements, we could definitely kind of combat that. So, I mean, there would have to be a lot of construction done. I would like to speak more to the residents who would be directly affected. I feel like it's really important to have that opinion, especially, and I know that there are opinions on both sides. There are some people who want Churchill to stay open. There are some people who want Churchill to stay closed. But it is important overall that we take into consideration the people whose lives will be directly affected, especially considering, like, I would be doing a disservice if I made this decision by myself, especially considering that I don't live near Churchill. I don't live near that intersection, so it wouldn't disrupt my daily life. But I want to make sure that we're able to do it in a way where it doesn't cause more harm than good to the people who have to live there and the people who have to, you know, be at those crossings every day. and whether we do an overpass or an underpass, as far as the crossings, that's another thing that I would like their input to take into consideration.
So Kathy would like to follow up on that by asking who should pay for grade separation and how?
Okay, so who should pay for grade separation? I mean, there are plenty of sources to get funding. I feel like that's kind of my response for everything, but it's true. There are plenty of ways to get funding, whether we pay for it ourselves, whether we get federal funding for it, state funding, get grants. I would definitely prefer to not pay for it and look for outside sources of money, especially because this is really an urgent issue. This is really a serious, I mean, it's a life or death issue. There have been people who've lost their lives because of the at-grade crossing, and we need to meet it with the urgency that it deserves. And it would be really hard to do that if we have to pay for it, especially considering the financial situation that we're coming out of, well, that we would be coming out of because we're still in it. But yeah, I would like to look at other sources. I mean, I don't care if we have to call it the Zuckerberg crossing and get naming rights, funding from naming rights, as long as we have funding for it and as long as it is dealt with urgently, yes.
So by calling this an urgent question, there has been, it has been argued that because of COVID, you know, the number of people that have been on trains came down, and nobody really knows how that is going to change in the near future. So some people have argued that we should just wait before we make this decision. So it's interesting to learn that you find this to be an issue of great urgency, that we have to come to a conclusion fairly fast. Can you comment on that? Like, would you say that COVID actually changed things or changed the issue of grade separation a bit?
So COVID has definitely changed a lot of things. COVID has taken a lot of people off of the roads because a lot of people work from home, myself included. Me and my fiance, we both work from home. And so the reason that I say that we should still treat this with urgency is because you have to think about when and if things go back to not normal, but if traffic starts to pick back up, then you have to think about the amount of people who would be impacted. And I mean, maybe it's just me being an engineer and overanalyzing, but I would rather take care of something, especially such a big construction project. I would rather take care of it now when there isn't that much traffic that would be impacted versus when there is a lot more traffic and people are going back to work, because then it would impact a lot more people and the traffic around that construction will be a lot worse. That's, of course, my opinion, and that's just my analytical way of looking at the situation is, okay, great. There isn't as much traffic here as possible. Let's do construction versus when everyone is going to and from work and back home. And there are these huge construction projects in the middle of, I mean, some pretty busy intersections.
I want to move away now from the grade separation issue to an issue that came up repeatedly in our meetings, and that is Foothills Park. Kathy would like to know, does Raven feel that restricting access to Foothills Park is somewhat racist? If so, why? Does Raven support making Foothills Park open to everyone? Who should pay for the impacts caused by permitting more people to access Foothills Park?
Okay, I knew this question would come up. So Foothills Park was made residents only in a time when Palo Alto was segregated. I feel like it's important to take that into consideration. So do I feel like it's still racist? I don't know. Do I feel like the residents only rule was created with segregation as the intent? Yes, I do. Do I want the park to be open? We are doing a disfortune to a lot of other people, a lot of kids who could learn a lot from the park. And they're not allowed to go, their schools aren't allowed to have field trips there, and they're not allowed to witness the wildlife and the ecosystem that Foothills Park has to offer. And I mean, that's something that a lot of residents of Palo Alto love about Foothills Park. Well, we're kind of depriving any other people of having that experience by keeping it closed. I understand that there is a concern for the wildlife. There is a concern for the amount of people, and I completely hear you. I completely acknowledge that. And I feel like we could open the park in a way that it doesn't impact those things. We could open the park and, just limit the amount of people who come there. We could, but is it worth not allowing other people those experiences that we love so much, that we value so much? I don't think it is. I know that there are a lot of people who would like for it to stay Palo Alto only, but I don't think it's fair. And I say that because a lot of reasoning that I hear for keeping the park residents only is because Palo Alto paid for it, and we paid for it by ourselves. But Santa Clara County offered to help pay for it, but only if Palo Alto was willing to open the park. And Palo Alto said no. And I mean, not only that, some of the cities who were being punished for this decision weren't in the kind of established state to where they could even afford it, to where they could even afford to pay for it. So that's why I feel like it should be open. It's just a little unfair, if you ask me.
Forgive my ignorance here, but I still don't understand the issue of how is it racist to actually keep the park closed. I mean, it is open to residents of Palo Alto, and I don't think that means that it's to a certain place. Obviously, it's not. So explain to me why that is racist to keep the park closed.
So that's why I said in my response that I feel like it was made that way initially.
How so? What did it say?
So when Foothills Park was made a residents-only park, Palo Alto was still not allowing Black people into Palo Alto to live here. So that's why I said it was made with the intent of being segregated. Do I feel like that's why it's still closed? I don't know. But I feel like that's why it was made that way initially.
Okay. So you're saying that, got it now, understand. So, okay. I still have issues with understanding that, but it's okay. I mean, if you're pointing at the original intent, then I would have to probably look that up and see what exactly it said. It seems a little bit difficult for me to understand that. Okay, let me move on as we only have about 10 minutes left, and as it is custom here, we'd like to give you a couple of minutes in the end to tell us why we should vote for you and not your competitors. So there are a couple of questions that I would like to get to that came in. Sophie Tsang would like to know, after you talked about what the city should improve, do you think the city has done anything well? And if so, what? Can you explain? I mean, you kind of explained that in the beginning by saying how warm and fuzzy Palo Alto is, but maybe you can explain what the city council has done well in the past years.
Okay. So I love Palo Alto, and one of the things that I love about Palo Alto is we have really good hospitals. We have really good schools here. We have an all-girls private school, which I think is pretty awesome. I know some people don't like it at all, but I think that's really cool. I mean, Palo Alto has just a lot to offer here. And one thing that I think that City Council has done well, I'll say now, they are very willing to discuss even difficult subjects like Foothills Park, like 8 Can't Wait, and things that weren't brought up to discussion yet that were being talked about throughout the residents and throughout the community, and even complained about to City Council. So I definitely give them kudos for that. Maybell, I know that there was the special election, but they still passed a really big senior affordable housing project. That's amazing. So City Council, I definitely don't want anyone to feel like I think City Council just does awful things or doesn't do anything right. No, City Council still does great things, and they're still doing the best to serve the community. So I think those are some good examples.
Okay, let me follow up with another question from Sophie. She asks, how do you balance what you think is right and what the residents want as a city council? So how do you come up with your policies, given your personal background and understanding what the citizens would like?
That is a really good question. I just kind of analyze the situation. I mean, I am not one to always think that I'm right. I'm a firm believer of changing your opinion when you receive new information. And I feel like it's important that other people do that as well. So I just look at it as, when you're a city council member, your job is to improve the quality of life of your residents. Or if the quality of life is already at peak quality, maintain it. But you kind of have to do that without having your own selfish motives. And you really have to gauge the extent of the problem. Why do we need it? Is it something that we really need? Or is it something that, a few people may think is important? And if there's ever something that the residents feel is a really big issue and I completely disagree, then that means that it's time for me to start doing more homework. And it's time for me to start listening more. Because if the residents feel like this is important and I don't, then what am I not hearing? And why am I not hearing it? So then it's time for me to self-reflect. So that's just the way that I process things. And as far as if there is a case where I think that that something should be done, like free tea Tuesdays. I don't know. I'm just coming up with something. And the residents are like, no, that doesn't make any sense. We don't need that. Then, the same rules kind of apply. I need to reevaluate, well, what am I really trying to do here? And let's see if I'm trying to create community engagement, and let's see how I can do that in a way that more residents find feasible to the community. I hope that answered your question.
Well, we have to ask Sophie. Sophie, if you can indicate if you think that was the right answer to your question, but I believe you did a really good job at answering that. So Sophie says, yes, thank you. So we got that covered. One question that came up in the past meetings too was, who is running the city actually? Is it the manager or the council? Can you comment a little bit on that conflict?
Oof. So it should be the council as far as how the structure is supposed to be done. And I would like to make sure that the position of power is where it should be. We definitely are supposed to all kind of be working together and giving firm, good instructions to the city manager as far as what needs to be done for the betterment of the city and the residents. And I would like to make sure that we establish that. Of course, good communication, good questions, good understanding is needed for that, compassion sometimes, and willingness to cooperate and collaborate. And I feel like it also doesn't really help when city council only speaks to each other at city council meetings. I know that you have to be careful as far as the Brown Act, but it's really important sometimes to speak to your, I guess, coworkers, even outside of work, if you need to really explain why something is important, or if vice versa, if you're if another city council member is like, no, Raven, the residents really need this and I don't understand, then I should be able to call them after the meeting and say, hey, please explain this to me because I don't really get it. So I in my opinion, it's really important that city council works together on and off council, but of course, in respect to the Brown Act, of course, not making any firm decisions without having, reports from staff and hearing public comment and getting the opinions of the residents and the people who would be most affected. But it is important to at least have a relationship with the people that you work with, even if you don't agree with their policies.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
I feel like I kind of went off subject a little bit.
That's okay. Believe me. There have been worse getting off the subject. Thanks. So let me finish with one question that we have been asking all the members who are running for city council, all the candidates. Which competitors would you like to have sit on city council if you're elected? Can you give us your pick?
So there are some who, and I don't want to call them competitors, we're all running because we have visions of the city and we have visions that we see are important, and we just really want to establish those. So I don't want to call them competitors. We're just all running to do a job, and hopefully for the right reasons. But I will say, so first I have to say that I look forward to working with whoever I get elected with if I'm elected. But I think the candidates who are obviously pro-housing, any of them, I don't want to name call or be specific. I feel like it's kind of a little unfair, but the pro-housing candidates, for sure. And I know 3 of us just got the Santa Clara County Democratic endorsement, which is huge. So just the people who take on the values and who are really here to serve the city and push for things that have been really hard to create in Palo Alto, and housing is definitely one of those.
So the three that got the support of the Democratic Council were Stephen Lee, you, and Carrie Templeton, I believe, right?
Yes, yes. I mean, there are some other people who are running who I wouldn't mind working with either.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let me give you the last minute to tell us again in your best elevator speech, why should we vote for Raven Malone?
You should vote for me because I am willing to collaborate. I am willing to make decisions based on the betterment of the city, even if it's something that I don't personally agree with, because that's not why I'm running. I'm running to listen to the residents, and I say that I want to make sure that I'm bringing the voices of people who don't feel heard to the table, and I really mean that. And I want to bring innovative ideas to complex problems. I want to not give up if a project fails. I want to look back and say, okay, why did we need this in the first place? Where did we go wrong? And how can we either make it better or try it again in a way that works for everyone? And I just really want to just be the candidate that everyone needs in the city. And I hope to do that. And I hope to bring that. And yeah, please vote for me if you think that I would be a good person to listen in and bring your values to City Council.
Raven, can you give us your webpage for everyone? If they want to support you, how can they do that? Do you want to let us know where they can go?
Oh, yes. ravenmalone.com. That is my website. There is a voice your concerns if anyone has any other questions. I have my cell phone number there. I really want to hear from the residents. I really want to hear your concerns. I really want us to work together to make Palo Alto better. That's really important. I can't do it by myself. That would be selfish, and I would have no idea who's being affected and if I'm making the right decision. So let's work together to make Palo Alto amazing, the city of our dreams. And yeah, so please reach out to me. Please also email me, raven@ravenmalone.com.
Raven, thank you very much for taking the time tonight to be with us. It was a pleasure to have you. As Freda said in the beginning, we only have one more forum, and that's next week. Just look on our website. I think it's next Thursday, if I'm not mistaken. It's Tuesday. Okay, Freda is saying it's Tuesday. Then if Freda says it's Tuesday, it is Tuesday. So thank you all very much for coming out tonight, and we'll see you next Tuesday. Good luck, Raven, on your campaign. All the best to you.
Thank you
Take
so
care.
much.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Have a nice day. Night. Have a nice night. Bye.